So welcome everyone. My name's Lindsay. I run OnlineMD, as you all probably know. And mainly what we do is record tracks for musical theatre singers who are going out for auditions, using them for self-tapes or using them for home rehearsal. So we do piano tracks, we do note bash tracks, and we also run the 16-bar challenge along with the Sing Space. And what is coming out of that is a lot of really useful audition cuts, which we are working on getting out to the community as well. So keep an eye out for them. But what I'm also hoping to do this year is run a series of masterclasses for our lovely community, which will make you more empowered going into auditions, will make you more empowered to do your own type of cuts, pick songs, speak to your audition pianist with confidence, all of those things. So that is why we've started these masterclasses. It's very much going to be a collaboration with us and the community of OnlineMD people. So please let us know if there's something you want us to cover, and we will absolutely try and do that for you, because it'll really help us to know what you need to know. We don't know what you need to know until you tell us. So we've already decided what we're going to do for the one after this, but rolling on forward, we're going to be taking suggestions and polling you to see what is the most useful thing. So today, welcome. This is a masterclass on the signs and symbols in your sheet music. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to run through a piece of sheet music with you, and we're going to go through the geography of the sheet music, which is where you need to go when, because sometimes you get a bit of music where you just go from the start to the end and that's it, but very often that is not the case. And I think one of the most important things that you need to be able to do as singers out in the industry is be able to communicate well with your audition pianist when you go into the room, and also if you want to cut your music, that you have confidence to do that. And sometimes if you don't know exactly what you're looking at, you might make mistakes, and obviously that's not going to serve you well when you're in the room. So what I'm hoping today is we're going to get a handle on the kind of running of going through a bit of music. So there may be things that come up today that we can't cover just because of time, but please ask the questions and I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't answer them today, we can roll that on to a future masterclass. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to get started, and I'm going to share a piece of music with you. And we're going to use this as our kind of template of what we're going to go through. So please let me know if you can see that okay, or let me know if you can't see it okay. That's probably the best way around. And what we're going to do is I'll do a little bit of chat about what you're seeing at the beginning here generally, but as I said, what I'm going to do is we're going to go through it as if you're reading it and it's happening in real time, and we're going to see what kind of things we come across, and I'm going to explain them as we go. So you'll always have, hopefully, the name of your song at the top of your bit of music and the writers, which you will see here, David Zippel and Cy Coleman. This is from the musical City of Angels. And you will always see a key signature at the beginning. So you'll either have, I'm just going to circle around here, you'll either have nothing, in which case you're in C major. But if you're not in C major, you will see either some flats at the beginning here, which look like the little bees, or you'll see sharp signs, which look like hashtags, and that is your key signature. We're not going to go into that today, but that is what that means. You also will have a time signature, which are two numbers stacked on top of one another. In this case, we've got 4/4, which means we've got 4 crotchets in the bar. That is the most common time signature that you will see. Lots of your sheet music will have that time signature on it. And invariably, I'm treating this as if we are musical theatre singers. So a lot of what we're doing, or what's passing over our desk, is musical theatre rep or pop and rock rep. So most of the time, your vocal line will be written with a treble clef in front of it, which is what you see here, the big curly one. And there's one more thing I'm going to explain at the beginning here. Underneath here, we've got the piano part, and you'll see another treble clef, which is what the right hand is playing, and you'll see a bass clef, which is what the left hand is playing. And you'll see that they are bracketed together, which means that that's one person or one instrument playing those two lines. And you'll also see, which is important, this long line that stretches down the left-hand side here. And what that is doing is connecting all three of those staves, and by staves, I mean the groups of lines that are going across there. They're all joined together because they're all happening simultaneously. And what that is called, and this is important to know, I think, is a system. So groups of staves that are grouped together are being played at the same time. So the vocal line is going on at the same time as the right hand of the piano and the left hand of the piano. And that is called a system, those three joined together. So you might hear a pianist say to you, oh yeah, it's the fourth bar in the third system. You'll know what that means. Then you go down to the fourth group of staves and count 3 bars along, for example. So that is what is happening there. So you'll see that line at the beginning, and you'll see it at the beginning of every new system, just to clarify that they're all getting played at the same time. You'll also see at the beginning, you usually get a marking at the top there that gives you an idea of the feel of the piece or the tempo of the piece. So here we've got freely, which you would need to communicate to your pianist that you would like them to follow you until another time, another tempo marking is given, which it is later on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go through this as if we're reading it in real time, just so that you can see everything. So when we read sheet music, we go from left to right as if we're reading a sentence in a book, and we read to the end of one system and then we jump to the beginning of the next system. So you're going to read those first 2 bars and then you're going to jump down to the next system and you're going to read the next lot of bars. So the first thing that I'd like to point out that we come across is a pause sign, and you'll see that for the vocal line, it's a pause over a rest. Because the piano is also pausing on this chord underneath. So that basically just means that the introduction is going to play and then the pianist will be holding that chord for you until you start the vocal line. And so it means that basically you don't have to come in time. You'll see that over maybe a long note sometimes for the vocal line. You'll see a pause note over that, which means that you can hold that in theory as long as you want until you move on to the next bit. So you'll see those pause symbols quite a lot. The next thing we come across is a double bar line. Double bar lines don't technically do anything in terms of function, but what they do indicate is that we're starting a new section. So for example, here you've got the introduction and then you're starting into the verse properly of the song, or the introduction of it. They're kind of, I guess, like chapters of a book. So every time you see a double bar line, you're going into usually something new, a new musical idea. So it's quite a good way of sort of bookmarking a bit of music. The other thing that I was going to point out at the top here is you'll see these letters above the sheet music here. These are chord symbols, which are useful if a pianist is maybe busking along with chords, not reading the actual notes that are there. I use them quite a lot just because it's an easy way to give a good piano accompaniment quickly. You know, they can do that. Or if there's a guitarist playing with you, they might use those chord symbols. It's also very helpful when you're cutting music because you can use those as a guide to where might be good places to cut. Again, we can get into that in another session, but just in case you're wondering what those are, that is what they are. So we would read all the way across this system. We'd go down to the next system here, keep going. There's nothing of note really that's happening here. And then we get into the first thing of note, which is that we've got a repeat bar here. So you'll see this big bit that I've got circled, and you've got 2 lines and 2 dots. And that is the beginning of a repeat section. So you're going to come back there at some point. So you need to just have that in your head that that is there, but you just keep on going and you'll find at some point later on in the music, you'll see another repeat marking, an end repeat marking, which means that that's telling you to come back to this point, okay? What you're also going to see here is this sign, which again means doesn't change what you're doing yet, but you need to take note of that because you will be coming back to that. So this is a great choice of song. I have to give Katie full credit for this. She suggested it because it's got lots of stuff in it that we can use. And so you'll come back to this point both as a repeat and as a dal segno. So we'll get to that later. Also, what's quite good to see here is you've got 3 sets of lyrics, which means that you know I'm going to need to sing this section of music 3 times unless you do a cut, but I'm going to do this as if we're not doing a cut, okay? And then we also have a new tempo marking here, which is moderately, and we're also getting told that we're going from a straight rhythm to a swung rhythm, which is what is annotated here with these 2 quavers, which is the 2 little notes that are beamed together. And you're getting told that we're now splitting the beat into 3 instead of 2, which gives it that da, 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 da sort of swung feel. Again, we're not going to go into that today, but it's worth pointing out to a pianist that this is where we go into tempo, a much more strict tempo here. All right, so we've hit the first proper verse, and we're going to sing the first proper verse. Down we go, all the way to, we hit another double bar line here. Again, just a section, another sort of musical section. We don't need to worry about that too much. We hit the top of page 4 and we see a 2 coda sign. Anytime you see that, ignore it the first time, all right? You have to get through all the music first before you're going to go to a coda. A coda is like an end section of music that we will get to in due course. But again, it's always good to note that that's there. All right, so once we get to here, we get to our end repeat sign that I was talking about here. So you've got the double bar line and the dots are on the sort of inside, and at the beginning they were on the inside. So if you imagine it's like a little bracket, a little umbrella of music, a little section. And we've also got above here, which is really important, the first time bar. So that means the first time you sing this bit of music, the first time you sing this verse, that is the bar you're going to use at the end. And this repeat sign indicates that we should now go back to the beginning repeat sign that I pointed out to you earlier. So we've sung to here, you can always count on me, do, 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 do. I'm not playing you any examples because when this goes on YouTube, I'll get the video taken away. But I will give you some lovely singing as we go, if you want it. So then we would go right back to the repeat sign again. And we would sing the second verse. As a matter of fact, if you want to know pretty love affair. So again, same feel as before. Don't need to worry about the segno yet, this bit. We're not there yet, okay? So we then sing the second verse. Scrolling down again. We're not at the coda yet, okay? We've not been told that it's time. So that's fine. We get to here. We don't do the first time bar because we've already done that. This is the second time we're doing this bit of music. So we're going to go to the second time bar. All right. So from you can always count on, skip this bar, go to this bar. Me. Quite often it's the same note for the melody, but the piano's usually doing something different because you're going to go into a new musical section, which you know because you've got another double bar line there. Okay, so then we go into what would be considered the bridge of this song, I think. And we go through there because we've hit the second time bar and we carry on. All right, and then you know as a singer, oh, I'm going to get sent back at some point because I know I've got a third lot of lyrics to sing on that verse that we just did. And here it is. Okay, DS al coda. So DS means dal segno, which means from the sign. And this is the sign that they're referring to. It's like a dollar sign with 2 dots on it. So when you see that, it's telling you dal segno al coda, and it's also showing you what the coda sign is. So that means dal segno from the sign to the coda sign. So you're going to go back to where the sign is until you get to the coda sign, and then you're going to jump to the coda. All right. So we're going to go back and find the dal segno here. All right. The reason that I've put a big lot of scribbles here is there's a space. So we don't keep going here. We go back to the sign, as we've said. All right. And this is our coda here. So we know we're going to get sent to that at some point as well. So at the moment, we're getting sent back to the sign. So let's go and find it. In the case of this piece, it's actually right back at the repeat section that we did earlier, but it can be anywhere. You might get sent to halfway through some other section or whatever. You just have to make sure that you know where it is. So we've come to the sign. Here we are. And now we know that we've got to keep going until we get told to go to the coda. All right. So this is the third lot of lyrics we'll be singing now about dinosaurs. You can always count on me. I'm solely to blame. My head gives advice that my heart ignores. I'm my only enemy. Then you've got this whole section again. The song goes on forever. I would not advise taking this in its entirety to an audition, which is why you need to know what happens so that you can cut it. All right, and then we finally get to here, and we finally get told to go to the coda. So you can look for this little sort of target sign, and you will find it down here. This is our coda, and we then, I think, can go all the way to the end. Yes. All right. And then at the end here, you'll see a double bar line, but this time one of the bar lines is thick and one of them is thin, and that is a final bar line. So we know it's the end of the piece. I know that might seem obvious, but if you ever want to finish early, you can always put in one of those final bar lines and score out everything else. And it just means it's clear to the pianist that is actually the end. All right, so I'm just going to do that. I'm going to do this really quickly now, just to show you. So we've got a free section, we've got a pause, then we go into our free vocal section with the vocal. With the piano following the vocal, go all the way down here. Then we hit the proper tempo, and we know that this is the beginning of a repeat section. So we do the first lot of lyrics, we get to the first time bar and the repeat sign. So we go back to the repeat sign. Then we do the second lot of lyrics all the way down. Instead of playing the first time bar, then we would jump to the second time bar, all the way through to the DS al coda, find the DS sign, it's right back here, and then you're going to sing right through until you get told to jump to the coda, which is the second bar of the first system on page 4. There's our 2 coda, and then we jump to the coda here, and we go all the way to the end. And that is how we navigate that piece. If you were going to cut this, a really easy way to just take out a verse of any song. I'm not really going to get into cutting today, but I do think it's quite a good thing to say that the easiest way to cut out a section of a song, if you have a first and a second time bar, is only to sing one lot of lyrics and go straight to the second time bar. All right. So you can score out first time bar, go to the second one, and then carry on. So that immediately takes out a section of music really easily, but you need to remember to score out the first time bar. Lots of the time people forget to do that. So that is my first offering for you. Do you have any questions? Katie, do I have any questions? No questions. Everyone's happy. Or, well, they're certainly not saying they're unhappy. All right, so I've got another bit of sheet music that I thought I could there's a few things in it that are slightly different, that are a bit more complicated, that I could show you, or just different things that have come up with that bit of sheet music. I must apologise for the language on some of these lyrics, but it was a really good piece of sheet music to give you an example, so I thought I would go with it. So this one is a Pink song, it's Beautiful Trauma. Again, we've got a few new things to point out to you at the beginning here. We've got obviously our title, our writers, we've got our key signature. This time we've got a sharp in the key signature instead of flats. So you've got your hashtag. Never refer to them as hashtags. They are sharps. We've got a 4/4 time signature again, which is obviously quite common. This is quite interesting that they've not bothered putting in the vocal line on this first system, because the vocal is not singing anything. So you're just seeing the piano line. So just be aware of that you've got a whole 4 bars of the piano before you've actually added the vocal line onto the stave. What you do have here that I wanted to point out is you've got aggressive, not too fast. So you've got a feel and you've got a tempo, but they've also given you a metronome marking. Whenever you see a little note equals and a number at the top of a bit of music, that's telling you the exact speed that it should be played at. It's telling you in this case that one of these notes, which is a crotchet, and in this time signature, there's 4 of those in a bar. You've got 96 of those crotchets per minute. We call it BPM, beats per minute. All right, and this is a little tip that I am just going to give you. If you have to sing 1 minute of music and you think, oh my God, how on earth am I going to work out what 1 minute of music is. If you know what the beats per minute is, you can work out how many beats you're allowed to sing. So for example, if I was to sing 1 minute of Beautiful Trauma, I would be allowed 96 beats, and that would make up a minute. So if I've got 4 beats in a bar, you can divide 96 by 4, and that's how many bars you get. I don't know what the answer to that is, but that's how many bars you would be allowed to do. I just thought of that today. I was thinking, oh yeah, that's actually a really easy way of working it out, because it's all very well for someone to say, oh, you can sing 16 bars, but 16 bars of something at 96 beats per minute or 16 bars of something at 50 beats per minute is obviously very different. So if you want an easy way of working it out, you can do that. If you want to check your speed in your head before you go into an audition, there are lots of metronome apps you can get for your phone. You could type in 96 beats per minute and it'll play you a click. I sometimes find that my tempo goes off when I'm nervous, and if I have to go into an audition room and give a tempo to a pianist, you can be all over the shop sometimes. So what's a really good thing to do is, if you've got something that's a really consistent tempo the whole way through, which this song is, lots of pop songs are, you can get that click going on your phone out in the waiting room just to make sure that it's sort of internalized before you go in, and then you're much more likely to give your pianist an accurate sense of that tempo when you go into the room. So again, we've still got chord symbols here. We've got a double bar line saying that we're about to start a section. So
you have a question.
I have a question. Lindsay. Oh, I'll stop then. Okay.
What's the significance of the treble clef at the start?
Okay, yes, I should have pointed that out. So the treble clef is basically, you've got 5 lines on a stave, and the treble clef is telling you basically where those notes are on the stave. So an easy way to remember it is the little curl that goes around the treble clef there is almost hugging a line, and that line is a G. So if you remember nothing else but the note that is, or the line that is getting hugged by that little curl is a G, you can always work up and down. The bass clef, for example, the G is in a different place on the stave. So it's basically, you use a specific clef depending on the range of the instrument or the voice, and it means that it sort of keeps the notes as far as possible actually on those lines, and you're not having to read lots of ledger lines, which are the wee extra lines you put above and below the stave when the notes are too high or too low. Does that answer the question? Please let me know if that answers your question. You'll find, it's Cassie that's asking the question, you'll find that most sheet music is actually written in the treble clef, even if it's a traditionally male song. In musical theatre and pop, they tend to write things in a treble clef. What you might see is a little 8 at the bottom of the bottom hook of the treble clef, and that means that they've written it an octave above where it should sound. So again, that just means it's easy for you to actually read things easily, and you're not having to have lots of ledger lines and that type of thing. Okay. Getting things moved about here. It's all good. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you for the question. Yes. Yeah, please ask me questions, because otherwise I will just go through all of this. And so we've got the start of this song is fine. Nothing to worry about. Take a little note. You've got a little segno there, a little sign, which you know you'll have to find later. The other thing that come up with this is crossed note heads, or ghost notes, which I've never heard them called that before. This means that you've got a cross note head instead of a filled in or a circular note head, and that means that you should sort of be speaking that at pitch rather than singing it. So you'll find that quite a lot in anything where there's rap or spoken. I mean, there'll be loads of this in Hamilton, right? The witch is rapping into the woods, all that, you'll see a lot of it. So they score out the rhythm, but they don't score out the pitch, or they'll give you a sort of guide pitch. So they will put it approximately where it should be, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm just aware that I should always say that to people, because you might not know that. So watch out for those cross note heads. That comes from sort of drum notation. You'll see that a lot. If you see a drum score, you'll see just loads of cross note heads all over the place on different lines in a stave, and that denotes, you know, whether it's a tom or a bass drum or a snare, that type of thing. Okay, so we've gone through here. Nothing of note, we keep going. This is why I picked this. We've got a double segno here, which means that we'll come to that after we've dealt with the first sign, we're going to have to deal with a second sign. So again, you can just have that in your head. What we've also got in this one is we've got two codas. All right, so we've got a second coda here, which is very rare, but I just thought it's come up, so I might as well, you know, tell you about it. So that is that, and then we keep going here. Now we've got a 2 coda 1 situation going on here. So again, we're going to have to come back to that at some point, but for the moment, we keep going. So we get all the way down to here. Dal segno al coda 1. So that means from the sign to coda 1 when we're told to go. So at this point, we need to find the single dal segno, not the double one. We're not there yet, single one. So we go back, right back. Always take the time to go through this with your pianist. I always find that they would try and rush you. They'd go, oh yeah, I know. Just slow them down a little bit and take your time to show them where they're going, because 9 times out of 10, they'll be fine. That 10th time though, you might not have told them exactly where the sign is, and it just takes them a minute to find it, and then you're off your game a little bit, which is not fair. So almost force them to listen to what you're telling them. And when you know what you're telling them, you'll feel the conviction to do that. So we've gone back to this first sign, and we're going to go through it until we get told to go to the first coda. All right, so down we go, down we go, down we go, past the double sign, we don't need that yet. Not the second coda, we go past that, past that, past that. Here we go, this is first coda. So we go to here, I won't say that word, but that is where we finish, and we go down to the first coda. All right, and it's just a little 4 bars. And then it's telling us to go back to the second coda, the double coda. So now we have to go back and find that. So here we go, back we go, back we go. There's the double sign. And we've just got a few bars until it sends us to the second coda, which will be at the bottom of the page somewhere. Here we go. And then we've also got, weirdly, it's not actually that weird, it's quite common in pop music actually, that you get this last section and they'll just say repeat and fade, which is not helpful when you're in an audition situation. So I would say if that sort of thing comes up, work out how many times you do want to repeat it, and then put an ending on it, which would probably just be writing in the chord you want to finish on. And again, we'll get to that in future masterclasses, how you can do that. But repeating and fading in an audition is not a good way to finish it. I generally think fade outs in music are a cop-out. So put an ending on it, because then you're not standing there feeling awkward while you get quieter and quieter. So we've got a repeat of this, and then it's the end of the piece. All right, so this one is a bit more complicated. So you might want to, I can't send you this sheet music, but if you want to buy it, and I just got it on Music Notes, and you can actually practice going through this, or find any bit of your sheet music in your rep folder that has repeats or codas in it, and just practice going through what all these signs mean and where it's sending you, because what you'll find is you just need to read it like a book until the first thing happens. So the repeat signs are always the first thing, and then you'll get dal segnos and codas afterwards. If there are no repeats, then obviously, you know, you need to keep an eye out for the dal segnos, because that is what it's going to be. That's going to be what you need to pay attention to. But if there are repeats first, you need to do those before you move on to anything else. Okay, I'm going to have a little drink of water. Have I got any more questions? Please let me know. If you have any sheet music with you or handy around the room at the moment, you can have a wee look and see if there's any signs or symbols on that sheet music you've got that you would like me to explain while we're on. And if there are no more questions, I will have time to show you one more sort of extra thing, which is just some extra stuff that might be useful in terms of, can you see that? Can you see that okay? No, okay. Let me just come out of that a wee second, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing that and start again. So what I did was there's a few things that come up in sheet music that weren't on the music that I was sharing with you just now. So what I thought I would do is just write you something ridiculous and just put on some little other signs and symbols that you might see that might be useful. Again, a lot of these are articulations that we can go into another time, but for now, I just thought it would be, they're quite useful and common things that you might see. And I know that sometimes they can be a bit confusing. So when you're going through a bit of music, you've got a key signature at the beginning, as we've said, you've got sharps or flats perhaps. And that means that anytime you hit a note that is that name, so for example, here we've got an F sharp. Anytime there's any F in the music, it's going to be an F sharp, which means it's slightly higher than it would be if it was an F natural. But if there's ever any other modifications that need to happen to notes in terms of pitch as we go, we add in what we call accidentals. And these are where you see sharps, for example, here, or flats, for example, here, that are not in the key signature, but they're required in order to make the melody how the composer wants it. So again, we'll go into that in future classes, but when you see those sharps and flats going through, they're modifying the pitch in some way. Sharps make it higher, flats make it lower. So I'm just going to go through these random little notes that I've made for you. I've got a little sort of funny little V sign here. That's an accent, so that just means you sort of hit the note quite hard. A lot of these things you won't see as much on vocal music, but you'll see it on instrumental music. So I've tried to pick out the ones that you're more likely to see on vocal music. So that's a, go for it on the beginning of that note, strong attack. Then you've got here is a trill sign. You might see that again much more in classical music, where you are oscillating between the note that's written there and the one above it, like a little wobble. I just put that one in there as an accidental, so that's a wee sharp sign. That's a wee natural sign, which would bring it back down. The other thing you might see quite a lot in vocal music, which I wanted to cover, are these little notes that go before other notes. These are called grace notes, and you do sing them, but they're much shorter. They're just a kind of quick note before you go on to the other one. So you'll see them like this here, or you might see them here with a little slash through it, and that they're basically the same, but what the one without slash means is that you're leaning into the little note. It's accented more than the main note. If you've got a slash through it, you're more leaning into the main note, not the grace note, if that makes sense. You might also see this type of thing, a big bracket going over a lot of notes. That means that it should be done vocally in one breath in a smooth kind of fashion. So it's legato, what we call smoothly. And so obviously in order to do that in singing, that would be doing it in one breath usually. We've also got these, what we call hairpins. You'll see them going these two ways. So if you see it going from small to big, that means it's getting from quiet to louder. And the change in dynamic is happening over that entire bar in this case, because it stretches over that whole thing. You'll also see it going the other way, which I've done down here, big to small. So you're starting with a louder volume and you're going to a quieter one. It's just an easier way. I think it's easier because it's a symbol or a sign, but you'll also maybe see crescendo written, which means getting louder. So this one here with the narrow to wide is a crescendo, getting louder. And if you see the one with it big going to small is a decrescendo. So again, you might want to write that on your music for a pianist if you want them to get quieter or louder and it's not already marked on the sheet music. What else do I have for you? Dots underneath sheet music, underneath notes, sorry, means staccato, so short. Again, you don't see it as much on vocal music, but I think it's worth knowing. You might also see sim with a dot added. This is quite often seen actually, and it just means that you should continue on in the same vein, basically. So keep going the same until you're told otherwise. I've also got an accel marked here, which means accelerando. accelerate, get faster. So you might see that. Again, you might see slowing down words, which I'll tell you about in a wee second. In fact, I'll tell you about them first. So we get RAL, which is one, rallentando, that's short for, or retardando. Musicians will argue the difference between those. I'm not going to go into it, but they can be used interchangeably unless you're going to get somebody who's very, very fussy. So you'll either see rit or ral. They both mean get slower. All right. You'll quite often see that, you know, at the end of something, you'll see a ral and then a big end chord. You'll quite often see that. There's no way of writing slowing down and speeding up with a sign the way there is for dynamic markings. So you just have to write in the, you know, you have to write in slow down or get faster. And then you've got, you might see this as well, this little sign here, which is a wee sort of curvy line coming away from a note head, and that means you're going to fall off the note. I'm trying to think of an example. I should just, you can always count on me. You'd fall off it. It's quite a jazzy thing. You see it in that type of thing a lot. So just again, if you're given a bit of an audition piece and it's got these type of markings in it, if they've bothered to put them in there, then you should pay attention to them. And then just to finish, I've got some triplets here. Again, I'm not going to go into note values as much, but just so that you know what they are, that means you've got 3 notes in the time of 2. So you've got to play them or sing them a little bit faster. So for example, here we've got crotchets. So instead of 2 crotchets, you've got to fit 3 in the space of 2. And the same with these quavers here. And that's just a ba 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 ba. So if it was straight, it would be da 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 da. That's our regular quavers. They're straight, and the beat is equally divided. Da 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 da. If we divide them into 3 triplets, we've got da 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 da. In fact, you can always count on me as a really good example of that. If you go away and listen to it, the free section at the beginning, while it is free, it is straight. So all the quavers you'll see, I'm one in a long line of good girls, da 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 da. They're straight. But once you get into da 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 da, you can hear there's lots of triplets in there. So it's just a different feel. It's a swung feel as opposed to a straight feel. And then I've got last wee thing, this little twiddly line, which looks like the trill, but it's going diagonally. It can go down or up, and it means a glissando, which means you're going through all the notes. It's a slide. So and you're getting to another note. So it's the fall off is just a sort of gentle one, whereas a glissando, you're actually reaching a sort of destination, if you like. So you might see that quite a lot. I think I have a question.
You do?
I do.
What does the dot after a note mean?
Okay, so these ones, if you see a dot after a note, it basically extends the length of that note by half again. So if you see this is a quaver, because it's a filled in note with a stick and it's joined to another one. So that is half a beat. If you put a dot on it, it's now 3/4 of a beat. So that can refer to anything. It can be, in fact, why don't I just write something for you here? So for example, if I have, here we go. So if I put in, for example, there is a crotchet, there's another crotchet, but I'm going to make it a crotchet and a half. You'll see that all I've got left in that bar now is a quaver, because I've kind of stuck on an extra quaver to that crotchet here. So instead of a crotchet, it's now a crotchet and a half. So if I was to sort of complete that bar, if you like, then that's what it would look like. And what's really good with music notation is it spaces, good music notation spaces it out so that you can actually see how much space the notes take up. So you can now see that this quaver here, this note is further over than if it was 4 equal notes like up here. Yeah. So anytime you see that, it's making the note longer by half again. Not to be confused with the dot underneath. here, which is the staccato short sign. All right. Fab. Okay. So I think that's all I wanted to cover today. I hope you feel like you've got a little bit more of a handle on the geography of sheet music in terms of where you need to go at what point, because you can know all the music theory in the world about your key signatures, your time signatures, all that type of thing. If you cannot mark your sheet music or understand what you need to sing when, you're going to be in a whole lot of trouble. So if you can get a handle on these things, then it's really, really helpful. If you go back now and look at any sheet music that has repeats or any signs, practice doing the movement of where you go to and from, and also practice, I would also say, explaining that out loud so that when you go into an audition, you know exactly what you're going to say. And anytime there are repeat marks or dulcineos or codas, make sure you've got them very clearly marked. All right, I'm a bit of a highlighter queen, so I will highlight things. Some pianists sort of balk at that. A little circle with red pen or something that makes it easy for them to find things is always going to serve you well. So that's what I would definitely say. Practice explaining your cuts or the geography of your sheet music, because it's really, really helpful. And it only takes 10 seconds in the room, but it is really good. And you know what? It's also really good for you, just if you've got quite a complicated song, for you just to have that last little go of going, all right, I know where I'm going. And you might have made a cut, so it's another chance for you just to, in your head, have a wee go at that cut before you actually have to sing it for anyone. Okay, does anyone have any last questions? If not, then we will wrap up for today. Are we good? Really useful. I wanted to do some short theory sessions for my choir. Okay. I know, yeah, it is really difficult actually with people. I think because in a choir situation, you end up with a whole myriad ability of people in a group, and you obviously have to kind of get used to going between what some people understand and what some people don't. So yeah, I think once you're in there doing it, Kerry, you'll really you'll know what people know a bit more. And hopefully as well, I think it's important that you do, if you are leading that type of thing, that you do educate them a little bit, because I think it's really good that you can have a shorthand with them. So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to put this up as a link, so if you haven't managed to watch it or you would like to rewatch it, then you can. We'll also be running more masterclasses. Our next one is going to be on Thursday, the 6th of April. In fact, I have
the links in the chat there.
The links in the chat. She's on it. Thank you, Katie.
Do you have one more
question?
Sorry, actually, what software are you using for your notation?
Oh, notation. I'm using Sibelius, Kerry, and you can use Sibelius for free up to, I think you're limited to numbers of staves, but I've never hit the limit. So for all the arranging that I'm doing for the 16-bar challenge and that type of thing, it's perfectly fine. You can certainly do choral arrangements and that type of thing on it. So yeah, go to, oh, thank you, Katie, it's already on it. There you are, Avid. You have to do an Avid login and then you can download it. It's really good. And actually, do you know what? Because if you use this simple one, it's actually much easier to navigate. You know how sometimes these programs are so powerful and you only need a fraction of what they do. So if you start with a little free one, it's actually much more manageable. So yes, our next masterclass is going to be working out your accurate vocal range and how to write that on your CV. Because now we are able to have our CVs have our vocal range on our CVs on Spotlight. What casting directors are also able to do is search by vocal range. They can't search at the moment by belt range, but they can search by your entire range. So it's really important that your range is on there to start with, that it's accurate, and that you keep checking it regularly, because obviously our voices change all the time. If you're doing a job, you'll find that your vocal range is sitting where that role sits. if you've been singing, I don't know, in a choir and you're singing the soprano part, your voice is working more up there. So it's really important that you keep checking it and keep updating it. You don't want to miss out on a role because you didn't have, you know, they could just be out by a semitone and then you don't get seen for a casting, which would be very sad. So I hope you'll join us for that. It's Thursday the 6th of April, 6 p.m. If you enjoyed this, please let people know that we're doing these masterclasses. We're also going to have some resources that you can access after this. So I'll put in some of the stuff that we've covered today, as well as some of your questions, which is great. So we'll keep you up to date on that. And keep an eye out for some of our 16-bar cuts going live on YouTube and also on our website as well. So thank you so much for your time today, everyone. It's been really nice to see you all. And I will hopefully see you on 6th of April. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.